think every industry has been impacted. No one is spared. And already, retail is facing challenges, for the last 5 to 10 years. Digitalization has been hanging on everyone's lips for the last 5 years at least. So it's not something that's new, but with COVID, certainly it has accelerated the decision-making process of the businesses. So many are jumping on the bandwagon, but my personal view is that a few have actually thought through the whole omni-channel strategy and not maximizing the effectiveness of the potential business avenues. And from the consumer side, certainly, they would be a lot more cautious as far as discretionary spending is concerned, and safety. I think safety would be a very big thing for all consumers, and they need to be assured all the time that they're taking very little risk or almost risk-free, if they were to be visiting your establishments.
So Aldo, in your case, you've had retail experience, you've got your products in some of the department stores, but you've also been doing it online. Has this made you change your strategy in any way?
Well, yes, definitely. As Patrina was saying, all segments and all the sectors in the business are being affected. There is not only one segment, but it's all affected. In particular, of course, in my retail directly, the retail is being affected. And my business has been severely affected because we were closed for a few months. And since the opening of 19th of June, we haven't seen that much increase because as I was saying earlier, it's true that the things are open, but the feeling is still people don't feel secure in going. So the whole shopping experience is going out, gathering, being relaxed. And if you are bombarded with the news that something's going to happen, people are a bit scared. So what we have seen is the traffic is still not there. And the other thing is that Singapore lives also, well, my clientele, to be honest, majority are from the local. So I build a business with a local Singaporean in particular, but definitely, and that's what we are missing strongly. So forget about all the tourism additional that we used to get and traveling for business and so on. That's even worse because they're not traveling at all.
See, with your years in the automotive industry, right, that's a big ticket item. How do you think the market will react to not just COVID, but also the future things that are going to be changing the landscape in terms of motoring, electrification, autonomous vehicles and the like?
I think the car industry in Singapore is possibly the worst industry you can use to measure the impact of COVID-19. The reason for that is because the supply of vehicles in Singapore is highly restricted. And in this market, demand almost always exceeds supply. I think in the recent round of COE biddings, you would see prices go up in the time of a pandemic, which I think caught a lot of people by surprise. But I think all of us in the industry knew that after 3 months of the shutdown, every car manufacturer was in a haste, was in a hurry to get rid of the aging stock. So I think the car industry is possibly the last industry to feel the effects of the COVID-19, simply because I think only the top 10th percentile of consumers in Singapore are in a position to actually afford and own a car. I've been through, the Asian financial crisis, the dot-com bubble, the global financial crisis, and every single time I would see demand really remaining fairly positive despite the economic slowdown. Having said that, I think COVID-19 is something that none of us have ever experienced before. I think firstly, the industry will probably go into a period of lower demand, but not to a point where the demand would actually be lower than the supply of COEs. In other words, you won't see COEs falling to $1 in the coming period. But I think going forward,
that's a shame.
I think a lot of people are actually waiting for that to happen. And I think the recent surge in buying activity in the car industry has something to do with the fact that people were expecting COE prices to come down. But let me make it very clear to everyone out there that the prices of COE does not reflect consumer demands in Singapore. The prices of COE actually reflect the strategies of the car distributors and retailers and how they want to play the game in the market. So I would say that we actually have a wrong appreciation of how demand is measured in the car industry. Having said that, I do see moving ahead, if unemployment rates keep climbing, like today we just received information that we're at 4% now and possibly worse news is to come. If that is to happen, then I would see even this protected industry like the car trade that we are in would also suffer a slowing down in demand. I think there will be a shift to value in the months ahead. I think people will start switching to used cars a little bit more. And I think this switch to value and utility is probably common to all other industries that we're in. I think you would find that loyalty to the brands would be an issue that we would have to grapple with, simply because the usual way of engaging customers are now completely eliminated by the virus. So the business has to spend a little time using digitalization to build the links and bridges to consumers again, and to see what's the best way to ride through this storm that is the COVID-19 and to find a new normal. And I see them inventing digitalization services as a priority. I think there will also probably be a higher rate of consumer engagement through digital means as well, which is something that we're not really good at. I think going ahead, these are probably the tools that we'll be using.
But say, just wondering, is it true that people were saying that the surge in the sales of the car last few months is also because of the fact that, you know, safety, because, you know, now all the parents want to drive their kids to school and not, you know, have them take public transport. So, you know, normally we don't really need a car, but now you feel that, yeah, why not? Is that true?
We're definitely seeing that. We're seeing used car industries in the months of probably May and June having an uptick in the number of customers making inquiries. So yeah, for sure, as public transport is shunned because of the fear of infection,
the
exposure,
I think
the demand for used cars will probably rise. And I think the demand for new cars is still strong, simply because I think people feel that there are bargains to be had in the marketplace.
Okay.
What's the mood like amongst tenants, Patrina? Because you've got months of closures for shops and uncertainty ahead. What has the engagement of OUE been with the tenants, and what have the tenants been saying?
The idea of high fixed rents, you know, is going to change. The way to go is certainly riding the risk, you know, with your partners. Smaller ones, a lot of them have thrown their hands up and you know, have wanted to just pull out and then wait till the dust settles and then they will come back. But we worked with quite a few of them who had taken this decision to actually continue to ride on, because only with riding on, they will be able to gain the experience and learn from it. You know, if they exit the market now, you know, and try to get back, you know, they'll be starting from ground zero again, and they would not have had the experience of going through it and knowing how to be nimble and how to handle the situation. So we've made it possible for them to ride through this based on a different scheme, based on a different rental arrangement, so that they can continue the business, and we will guide them and work with them, you know, to the point, until such point that they really cannot make it. So we don't make them give up so easily. So that's one. But of course, if even pre-COVID, it is already a very difficult and challenging business, then we will let them take the decision as they wish. On both locations for our malls, the tenants are definitely seeing the challenges in trying to continue their business. So as a landlord, I think for us is to really look at them as a partner, work with them in terms of survival and sustainability. So we have had cases where we need to restructure the rental, perhaps on a short, mid-term, long-term kind of schemes and plans, so that it gives them some reassurance and certainty that they will be able to survive. We also monitor the sales very closely and look at perhaps even opportunities for them to go on the digital or e-commerce platforms, so that it gives them a new avenue for sales. So there's a lot of engagement. Yeah.
Would you get onto the digital space as well in terms of being a digital online tenant landlord? Is that something
that's something that we are looking at the moment. It's always really challenging for landlords to be on the e-commerce platform because we're not the retailer. But having said that, there are other ways that we can make use of this avenue to make sure that the tenants have a good platform to be able to work on driving up what they're missing out as far as the sales from the physical space.
There are a group of people who seem to believe that if we can just ride out the worst of this pandemic, business will return to the way it used to be. And then there's a group who believe that really this is a epochal event. This is something that changes the trajectory.
A new norm.
Yeah, and there's a new normal that's about to set in. I'm just wondering from your perspective, what do you see the trends going forward?
I see that there will be a new change in the mindset and mentality of the consumers. Discretionary spending is definitely here to stay, even though we may go back to when things are all settled. There's no more high unemployment rate and all, but people having been through this, would definitely remain cautious. Of course, what's really new that surfaced is safety. I guess we weren't that conscious about safety because the trend 5 years ago and moving towards right up to pre-COVID was communal. So everything was communal. So now communal has turned to personal because we're all concerned about these major mass events and mixing around too much and all that. So that is probably the most, that's the only difference, and new to these evolving consumerism. But otherwise, the other values, health, wellness, interesting content, convenience, all these have already been in existence even pre-COVID.
I was just about to say that in the car industry, when there's an economic slowdown, consumers tend to fly towards luxurious brands. So I wanted to ask Aldo whether he sees this situation prevailing in the next, say, year or so, that people actually would choose to hold on to brands that they're comfortable with in the luxury sphere.
People who build the brand towards loyalty, in particular local clientele and services, tend to stuck and to grow because loyalty pays in a medium and in a long term, and that will work. The luxury will still exist and will still carry on, but this COVID-19 is an accelerator, and like is accelerating the disappearance of certain people, is accelerating also the developing and things that Patrina was saying that was unthinkable before. their reality. But we need to be careful in not jumping too fast into the things and making the things always going to be, nobody is going to be, change anymore. No, people still wants to go in the car, the showroom, and try, see, talk, get the confidence and so on. And then they might take a decision and buy the car also online, but that's another thing. But you still need to have that kind of feeling and connection and so on. So in terms of the loyalty, the brand pays back.
Yeah,
definitely.
That's true.
And if you, even the offices, people say, oh, the people start working from home, they don't need the office anymore. It's not true.
Not true. That's not true.
Yeah.
No, that's not true.
Not true.
It will evolve into a new format, a hybrid, which is more effective, more efficient, something that they've learned from this whole exercise. But, certainly the brick and mortar spaces and the retail malls and the offices, the physical offices will still continue. But it's all about a hybrid and how they put the two together, which is why the omni-channel, that's going to be the next big, it should be the next big thing.
Okay, the online, saying that people keep talking about the online business, we need to be careful because when we see online, there's analysis within the analysis. What people buy online was people, home appliance, some food, and other things. I don't think if you see the rating of people buying clothing and shoes and other things online are not that high as they might things. People still need to go to the stores and so on.
I always struggle with this because how do you communicate how a car drives and feel online? How would a consumer be able to appreciate, the leather in Aldo's shoe, how finely curated the leather is online. And I think the car industry has struggled with this for the longest time, which explains why we are pretty slow to the digitalization game. But now COVID-19 has compelled us to come up with probably solutions which are not ideal. And I think going forward, this may be a situation where we make do with something less than perfect and work with something less tangible to results. I can tell you that from the showroom perspective, a test drive adds about 40% weight to the buying decision of a customer. So I fear that going forward, digitalization will literally slow down the pace in which people make purchase decisions.
But having said that, I have bought a car online before.
Oh, really?
Yes, I have.
A new car?
Yeah, and it was a used car, and I didn't see the car until I picked it up that day.
Wow.
That's very brave.
That is really brave.
That's very brave.
I've done that before, once.
Because generally, I think what happens with the online space is you would buy things that are up to a certain price point, things that you have tried, and from brands that you're familiar with. And then you might experiment. But as Say said, about the test drive feel, you can't get that. Walking in Aldo shoes, ALODD shoes, you can't get that either. And the sizing may change. But is it a matter of time before the technology also keeps up and brings some of those experiences to the computer or to that virtual space? You could get better programs to measure your feet and find the best fit for your shoe and deliver that, or even bespoke. Likewise for cars, I'm not sure how that will be conveyed, but it's a possibility, right? So this would push technology in a new direction as well.
Because with the COVID, right, everybody's shopping online, the young and the old. And there are studies that also said that the threshold and the amount that they're prepared to spend and the categories of products that they are prepared to buy online has also widened during this period. So, it's also exposed many people, to the opportunities of buying other things as well. And they're prepared to take the risk in that sense because of the return policies that the retailers, the online retailers have made it so convenient.
In all of that collaborative processes, the party that probably will suffer most will be the department stores, because that was their role, right, to bring products and people together. But via the online space, then it's going to avoid, we don't need them anymore. Will they be running the risk of becoming dinosaurs?
Yes, if they don't act.
Reinvent themselves, yeah.
Department stores, and before we used to have the multi-brand stores, if you remember. The multi-brand stores were the one who were making the brand, because they used to go in the show, in the fair, in the fashion show and so on, and they used to buy the hottest and the newest brands and then bring into
they
the
curate the whole, curated.
So what happened is those are disappeared. They don't buy. The department stores, they used to buy before, now they don't buy. So what they do practically, we became all finance. They ask you to come, you pay rent, they take commission.
They're like landlords now. They don't do the curation of the collections anymore like they used to.
Correct. And the other thing is the response, what it's bringing lower end and selling volume. They don't help you. They don't help you to build. You know, you're afraid and you affected the business online. But what are you doing to get that chunk of the business online of this brand that is paying the rent to you, helping them and converting those online? Say, hey, if you buy from the off the shelf, you pay here. If you buy online, you get this commission, and you lower your commission, so you can come to a deal. So they're complaining in one way from the online business. Everybody says the online is affecting the business. The online is not affecting the business. The online should be the department store working like a showroom.
Yeah.
So the people, the offline and online should be level. And you need to come to a conclusion that, to come into lowering the rent, but converting, recuperating from the turnover. So they need to be kind of within the agreement. Everything can be made in agreement. So that's what I believe.
Yesterday, Nike made a pretty interesting, or a couple of days ago, they made an interesting announcement of realigning their structure to be more digitalized. And they created a new role called the guy who's in charge of customer creation, which I thought was really interesting because we've always known demand creation. But here, I think digitalization, we all know, can be a great leveler of brands. And I think the brand that tells the best story digitally tends to have an ability to reach far wider than their own brand equity would. And I think Nike's approach is actually instructive for all of us, especially in the car industry, where we assume that the power of the brand is enough to give us consumers. But I think going forward, the creation of customers, because honestly, in the pandemic, the buying demand is probably negligible. But when you have a story behind the brand, I think it creates a completely new angle at looking at consumerism.
I don't think this is something that will it will carry on. It will end, but definitely has put into a new position, another level of thinking and making possible the impossible and the unthinkable. And again, it has accelerated things, which is healthy in one way. Always need to see the positive side. I would say in Italy, not all the illness comes for nothing. Wherever it comes to illness, you have to find a solution, and the body gets stronger. And I think it shows a different scenario and stimulus. And what we are talking about here, we're all, looking forward to take actions and to change. But definitely the basic of the business and the brand and the whole system will still remain.
I think an analogy that I would like to use, Kannan, is I underwent brain surgery for a tumor in 2004. And I remember the doctor saying that, after surgery, it is a bit early to give a prognosis because, there's trauma to the brain and, it'd be really difficult to make any sort of reasonable prognosis. I think if we apply that sort of example to where the economy is at, where retail is at, the industry has suffered tremendous trauma. And I think for us to really jump in right now to give a long-term prognosis may be actually a bit premature. Yeah. I think what is to say is if we look at the responses to the crisis, digitalization and so forth, these are all good things to have. And whether there is a COVID-19 or not, I think these are things that has to be good for the businesses in the long term. So anything that we put on the table right now in response to this can only be good for the retail industry, for the economy as a whole going forward. So I would probably put off giving too much prognosis, just like what Aldo is saying at this point in time. But at the same time, I think for us not to do anything is pretty silly as well. I would say, honestly, everything that's happened to us happened for a reason. And I think our responses can only be for the betterment, and it cannot be detrimental, I think.
Great. Okay, that's quite a positive note to end on, say. And I'm glad to see that all your personal trials and tribulations have somewhat settled, right? So glad to see you've mended well. And we hope that society mends well, that the industries mend well as well. And we'll have to just wait and see what can be done. We'll also have to play a proactive part in terms of introducing fresh concepts and ideas. Yeah. I think digitalization has helped us in a big way. Yeah. For existing businesses, we'll have to look at what you need to do to address the changes and possibly put in new measures for the road ahead. And there is a road ahead, so we just need to make sure that we get on that road in a safe fashion.